In my previous life, on the day my husband was taken back by his wealthy family, he didn't bring me with him. He only brought our son, because he was the family's eldest grandson. But he also brought along Sophia White, because she looked exactly like the youngest daughter their family had lost. As for me, worn down from marriage and childbirth, I had lost all the brilliance I once had. When he was in his 20s, Daniel's mother suffered from mental illness. Every time she saw me, she would scream hysterically. So he told me, "Rachel, wait until my mom gets better, then I'll come back for you. I won't let little Ethan forget you." I waited year after year, but they never returned. When Ethan grew up, I finally couldn't endure it anymore and went to find them. My son clung closely to Sophia's arm, looking at me with disgust. "Why are you here? Why are you ruining my family?" In this life, I chose to leave first. I no longer cared for their wealth and power. From now on, the moonlight and the wind had nothing to do with me. One day, the Thompson family, a powerful clan from Tansville, came to my village. Their line of luxury cars clogged the narrow dirt road. They had come searching for the son they had lost 6 years ago. My husband, Daniel Thompson. Our village was so remote that even after 6 years of desperate searching, with the family nearly driven to madness and even believing he might be dead, they still hadn't found this hidden place. When the village children came running to spread the news, Daniel was teaching our son, Ethan Thompson, how to write. Ethan's brush stopped mid-stroke, ink spreading across the paper, while Daniel remained calm. "Ethan, I told you before, writing is training the heart. Your heart must be steady." I knew what would come next. He would reclaim his identity and return to Tansville. After the Thompson family left, Daniel was as composed as ever. Even though he had lost his memory and lived in this village for years, the heir they had so carefully raised hadn't lost an ounce of his bearing or nobility. And I was even calmer than he was. I still went up the mountain to gather mushrooms as usual. On the path, Mrs. Wilson teased me, "Rachel, you're about to follow Mr. Pa Thompson to the city and enjoy wealth and honor. Why are you still picking mushrooms?" That day, Daniel told his family that he needed to pack and asked them to return the next day. He also said he would be bringing 2 people with him. The villagers were envious, whispering that I must have been blessed by ancestors. They all forgot that when Daniel had first drifted here, memoryless and helpless with no knowledge of farm work, I was the one who cared for him like a child. Because he stayed in my home, I was slandered, and so he married me. Our wedding was small. We invited only a few neighbors and handed out red-dyed eggs as the token of celebration. After marriage, we lived happily. At that time, he was mine alone. Now that he was about to leave, he should have taken me and our son with him. But I knew this wasn't like my previous life. Daniel Thompson did bring 2 people back to the Thompson family, but not me. Thinking of that, I only smiled at Mrs. Wilson. "This year's pine mushrooms are excellent. Selling them will give me enough to leave this place and start a new life." When I returned home, Sophia White was teaching Ethan English. She said softly, "You have to study hard. Kids your age in Tansville can already speak plenty of English." Ethan listened seriously. Sophia smiled and patted his head. "You're so bright, Ethan. Nothing like." Ethan hugged her waist and added quickly, "Of course, how could I be like Mom? She only knows how to speak in that country accent. If I talk like that in the city, everyone will laugh at me." Daniel was reading a book. Hearing this, he only looked up and gave a gentle smile. It was such a warm, beautiful scene, a scene I had witnessed twice in my lifetime. Sophia White was also a girl from our village. Her father abused her mother, who died young. Later, she was taken in by relatives and sent to school in the city. For some reason, she eventually returned to the village. At first, I had been grateful to her, because once, when Ethan had fallen into the water while playing, she had saved Ethan, but after that, things slowly began to feel wrong. When she came to my house and saw Daniel Thompson, he was standing tall with one hand behind his back and the other holding a brush. His long, clean fingers moved gracefully across the paper with natural elegance. She walked closer and said sweetly, "Mr. Thompson, you're such a learned man. Rachel is truly blessed to have you." Daniel often read books on astronomy, geography, and poetry, things I couldn't understand. Between him and me, there was only the summer heat and the winter cold. Yet in Sophia White's words, I could hear the hidden mockery meant for me. I understood it, but I could only stand awkwardly at his side. After that, she came to my house every 2 or 3 days, begging Daniel to go teach at the school. From then on, she called him Mr. Thompson in a honeyed tone. Later, whenever I brought him lunch, I always saw Sophia sitting beside him. The chicken soup I had stewed all night long, he carefully poured a bowl for Sophia first. Ethan giggled and said, "Mom, Miss White loves your cooking the most." Of course, I was the one raising father and son, getting up early to pick mushrooms, chasing hens with the neighbors, laboring to clear land and plant vegetables behind the mountain, choosing each tender sprout carefully. I couldn't bear to eat the good things myself, yet they were always taken and used to please someone else. In my previous life, I once said all this aloud in front of everyone. Daniel frowned, pressing his thin lips together, then bowed and apologized. "I'm sorry, Miss White, my wife was being rude." He made it sound as if I had done something shameful. Ethan, meanwhile, declared bluntly, "If Mom won't let Miss White eat, then I won't eat either." Sophia, like a mistress of the house, pulled Ethan close to her and scolded gently, "Ethan, how have I taught you? You mustn't talk to your mom like that." Ethan pouted and mumbled an apology to her. Sophia shielded him protectively, her gaze on me showing not the slightest trace of guilt. In that moment, my husband and my son together made me into a woman utterly discarded. My heart ached unbearably. Sophia White, soft and fair-skinned, stood beside them while I, always going up the mountain for mushrooms or down to the fields for farm work, carried a rough, weathered air. After giving birth to Ethan, I had long since lost the slender grace of a young girl. The three of them standing together truly looked like a family of three. In my past life, when Sophia went back to the Thompson family with them, no outsider ever suspected she wasn't Ethan's real mother. At first, Ethan called her Sister Sophia, but she laughed and said he should call her Mom instead. Only later did I understand the little scheme behind her words. When Daniel saw me coming in with my basket, he stood and moved aside, perhaps because the earthy smell on me offended him. Then, noticing my basket filled with wild mushrooms, he finally showed a flicker of guilt. "Why are you still doing such hard work? We already have money now." The last words he spoke very softly. In my previous life, after he left, I continued to receive a sum of money regularly, but it was only enough to cover my basic living expenses in the village. It was impossible to go anywhere farther. I didn't explain anything to him now. I only said, "I'm used to it. When I'm free, I have nothing else to do." After speaking, I picked up the needle and thread on the table and began sewing sachets stuffed with herbs to ward off mosquitoes. But those little pouches only worked for about a week before losing their effect. Ethan's legs were already covered in mosquito bites. For some reason, this time, I didn't feel the same heartache I had before. Ethan saw me sewing the sachets and looked annoyed. "Mom, when we move to the city, there won't be any mosquitoes. You don't need to make these things for me and Dad anymore." Yes, the Thompson family had never valued anything I made. In my past life, before that black car drove away, I had cried while stuffing many handmade things into Ethan's hands, but all of them were thrown away on the roadside before they even reached the end of the village. The old woman at the entrance picked them up and immediately recognized they were made by me. She returned them, looking at me with both pity and mockery. At the time, I thought it had been Daniel's mother's decision. But later, I scraped together money, went down to the county, and bought a cell phone, hoping to keep in touch with them. Every time we video called, Ethan was always impatient. "My horseback riding class is starting. Aunt Sophia is calling me." Meanwhile, I was scraping together every coin, trekking through forests and crossing streams, sneaking into town just to see him. But the moment he spotted me, he would run straight to the car, as if terrified I might call his name in front of others. Watching his back as he fled, I finally understood. It wasn't the sachets whose fragrance had faded, it was his heart that had become hollow. From then on, I stopped going to look for him. When he grew older, I became ill from overwork. The doctor told me I didn't have much time left. I called Daniel Thompson. He was silent for a long time before finally saying, "I'll arrange a hospital for you." But I didn't want treatment. I only wanted to see my son one last time. So I put on my best clothes, spent my remaining money to have my hair done, and went to his grand coming-of-age ceremony. "Ethan, don't you remember your mother?" But he clung affectionately to Sophia White's arm, glaring at me with disgust. "Why are you here? Why are you ruining my family?" Daniel stood beside him without saying a word. The cold calculation and indifference of a wealthy family were laid bare in their eyes. In the midst of that lavish banquet, I was like a filthy old rat, driven into the gutter. In the end, I was struck by a speeding truck and collapsed on the ground, staring up at the sky. Tears slid silently from the corners of my eyes. Heaven had truly been too cruel to me. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day the Thompson family arrived in our village to take him away. This time, I refused to be the pitiful fool I had been before. I no longer wasted my time making sachets and pillows for them. I only said coldly, "I know you don't like these, but I promise to make them for Lily." Ethan looked confused, not understanding what was happening. Though I was sometimes strict with him, in truth, I loved him deeply. Whatever good things I had, I always gave them to him first. He pouted. "Lily isn't a good kid. She doesn't respect her teachers at all. Why would you make things for her?" Lily was one of the rare children in the village who wasn't blindly devoted to Sophia White. At school, she was often isolated because of it. In truth, she had never been rude to Sophia, she just liked me more. She once told me that the scent on me was very pleasant, fresh and alive. Yes, there had even been a time when Daniel pressed his face against my neck and said I carried a fragrance full of vitality. But in the end, he still chose Sophia, who reeked of heavy powder and perfume. Just a few days ago, I saw Lily's pale arms covered in swollen mosquito bites, so I had promised to make her some sachets to keep them away. What father and son didn't value, someone else still cherished. Calmly, I stitched each thread. I'll make things for whoever I want to make them for. Ethan was unhappy. "Mom, you're so mean. I'm gonna find Aunt Sophia. She said she'll take me into town to eat Western food and teach me how to use a knife and fork." He glanced at me and added, "You've never eaten Western food, have you?" I didn't look up. "No, never. Go ahead." He punched the pile of cotton in frustration, not understanding what exactly was wrong. In the past, I had always been jealous of Sophia. Wherever she took Ethan, I would try my hardest to follow and keep up. The year Ethan was born, I nearly lost my life. Clutching Daniel's hand, I had begged with my dying breath, save the baby." In the years that followed, I always believed children mattered more than a husband. But in the end, the one who hurt me most was Ethan. After Ethan left, glancing back 3 times before disappearing, Daniel finally walked over to me. "Rachel, are you angry with me? If you're upset, take it out on me, but don't drag the child into it. Tomorrow we'll be leaving early. Don't spoil things for everyone." Unhappy? I was stunned for a moment. In my previous life, once they left, there was never a trace of happiness in my days again. Yet now he dared to tell me, "Don't make everyone unhappy." That day was just like before. Even though Daniel Thompson's mother was gravely ill, she still traveled thousands of miles to see her son, who had been missing for so many years. But the instant she saw me standing beside him, her face twisted into extreme disgust. She screamed, "Imposter! Monster! Get away!" I froze. I knew I wasn't beautiful, and I knew the Thompson family wouldn't like me, but I hadn't expected it to be this bad. The other Thompsons only sighed and said to Daniel, "Since you went missing, your mother's mind hasn't been right." Daniel hadn't yet regained his memory, but the bond between mother and son made grief shadow his face. What shocked me most was how much his mother adored Sophia White. She held Sophia's hand warmly and said, "Vivian, you've finally come back." Only then did I realize she had mistaken Sophia for her youngest daughter who had died. After the Thompson family left, Daniel said to me, "Rachel, you saw what my mom is like. She can't handle any more shock. Once she gets better, I'll bring you back. I won't let Ethan forget you." He used his mother's condition as an excuse and took the chance to insist on bringing Sophia with them, claiming Ethan needed someone familiar by his side, someone to help him adapt. In my previous life, I believed him, and I waited, year after year, but they never returned. Later, Daniel told me, "Rachel, I can give you a large sum of money, but you can't be the mistress of the Thompson household." I lost control, screaming at him, "And Sophia can? What makes her different from me? Her background is no better than mine." All the bitterness I had buried for years finally exploded. He didn't argue, only looked at me with pity. But what could I do? Back then, because he had no status, we had never even registered our marriage. I only learned later that Sophia had the same face as Daniel's youngest sister, who had died in an accident. That was why he insisted on taking her back, and that was how she so easily married into the Thompson family. At that moment, my heart was a storm of emotions. So some people's fates were blessed beyond reason. But why did all the suffering have to fall on me alone? My parents died early, leaving me nothing but a plot of land. No matter how hard I plowed and tilled that soil, it never produced anything of real value. I had no choice but to gather mushrooms from the mountains and work everywhere I could as a seamstress, just to survive. When I took Daniel in, one mouth to feed became two. At first he was useless, unable to do anything. I had to give up some of my farmland to plant medicinal herbs just to earn a little more money. Day after day, through sun and rain, the hardship wore me down. People forgot, but once, when I was young, I had been known as the beauty of the region, prettier than Sophia White across 10 villages. But when I later saw her again, I couldn't help but feel inferior. Her hair was styled fashionably, her clothes were the newest designer brands, her every gesture refined like that of a true socialite. She knew I had once gone to the school to see Ethan, and deliberately came to confront me. Her gaze was dripping with arrogance as she sneered, "If others knew someone like you was Ethan's mother, everyone would laugh at him. Daniel only married you back then because he was forced. He had no choice at all. You should be sensible and leave this world that doesn't belong to you." Even Ethan's attitude proved her words true. In that instant, I remembered the day Daniel proposed to me. In his eyes, there hadn't been the slightest trace of a smile. Later, when he was naming Ethan, he muttered that this place was too backward. He said he hoped Ethan could soar as freely as if he were flying through the universe. I began to doubt everything. I had risked my reputation to save Daniel Thompson, risked my life to give birth to Ethan. Was it all just so father and son could trample me again and again? From that moment on, I stopped contacting them, and they seemed to have completely forgotten me as well. It wasn't until I was dying that I realized only at the moment of life and death would we never meet again. In my previous life, I had poured out all of my devotion and all of my foolishness. In this one, I wanted to live for myself. To Daniel, I was just a brief interruption in his life's song. And to me, he could be nothing more than a fleeting shadow in mine. On the day they were preparing to leave, Daniel handed me a grasshopper woven from blades of grass. Back in the days when we were happy, whenever I was angry, he would make one to coax me. I once treasured them like jewels, filling an entire box with them. But now, I didn't even raise my hand to take it. Daniel didn't seem to care. He gave a faint smile. "We're leaving today? Are you still upset?" In the past, I had often been angry with him because of Sophia White. When he and she spoke warmly together, I would ask, but he would always brush me off. "You wouldn't understand." I couldn't accept that. "If I don't understand, then teach me." But Daniel refused. "I'm already tired from teaching all day at school. Do I have to come home and keep teaching you?" So I scraped together money to buy one of the books they always discussed, In Search of Lost Time by Proust. Yet I fell asleep after only 3 pages. I couldn't understand what they found so fascinating about such things. Back then, Daniel only laughed, ruffled my hair, and handed me another grasshopper. "Here, play with this," he said, like he was soothing a child. I once thought that was love. Years later, when I looked back, I finally realized he had never loved me. That was why he never wanted to spend effort on me. A grasshopper made of grass could be woven in a minute, but teaching me to read a book might take months. Later, I read a great many books on my own and discovered it wasn't so difficult after all. That is why in this life, I no longer cherished those grasshoppers. Whatever I wanted to learn, I would teach myself. Seeing that I still didn't take it, Daniel looked slightly surprised. In that moment of silence, a car horn sounded from outside. The Thompson family had arrived. Daniel sighed. "Then give them to me." I frowned. "Give you what?" "The sachets. It's inconvenient to take the pillows with us, but sachets are small. You must have made extras for Lily. She can't possibly use them all." In that instant, I understood. He still thought I was just being stubborn, only sharp-tongued. I laughed and shook my head. "There aren't any left, not a single one. I sold them all." My embroidery skills were very good. On my mother's side, one of my ancestors had been a famous seamstress, and before she died, she taught me her craft. In truth, the sachets I made were very popular. It was only that farm work kept me busy, so I rarely had time to make many. The few I did finish, I always gave to him and Ethan. Daniel kept staring at me, as if he didn't believe my words. But then Ethan came running in happily, pulling Sophia White along. "Dad, let's go already." Sophia wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. Look at you, so excited you're sweating. Daniel lifted him into his arms. Say goodbye to your mom, son? Still sulking, Ethan turned his head away and refused to look at me. My eyes fell on the handkerchief in Sophia's hand, and suddenly I spoke. Give that back to me. She froze. What do you mean? I embroidered that handkerchief. Return it to me. Sophia burst into laughter, her tone dripping with scorn. Something like this? Take it to the city and people will only laugh at you. If you really want it back, Rachel, I'll return it to you. Sophia White said. Back then, when she saved Ethan, I had nothing valuable to give her, so I embroidered that handkerchief as a gift. On it, I stitched a pair of butterflies, so lifelike that everyone who saw them praised the work. Their wings shimmered, changing colors with the light. To make them, I once sold a precious ginseng root just to afford the finest thread. But now Ethan's face twisted with obvious disgust. That expression, whether in my past life or this one, I had seen far too many times. I knew he felt ashamed of me. Father and son had always been generous, never calculating. Ethan would lend candy to his classmates, but no one ever gave him any in return. Daniel often helped poor students pay tuition, never asking for anything back. Only I counted every penny, splitting coins in half, arguing with neighbors until my face flushed red just for a few more cents from selling eggs. Sophia was different. She spoke gently, never quarreled, and spent her wages pleasing Ethan, buying him things I would never allow. Over time, of course, Ethan grew closer to her. Whenever I showed my displeasure toward Sophia, Daniel always defended her. Once Ethan had a stomachache and I refused to let him eat ice cream, but Sophia secretly bought it for him anyway. As expected, he ended up with diarrhea, nearly dehydrated. She cried until her eyes were red, insisting, "It's my fault." Just as I was about to scold her, Daniel spoke first. She only meant well. Don't blame her. Looking back, it was clear. They were always on the same side. Compared to that, all my penny pinching seemed meaningless. Daniel had been born into wealth. To him, there was no need to calculate like I did. No wonder he never wanted to bring me along. When we reached the gate, Daniel suddenly noticed the chickens and ducks in the yard were gone. What about the poultry? Weren't you the one who valued them most? He was right, I once did. The eggs could be sold, helping us afford more meat. But Daniel had always hated them. His refined temperament couldn't tolerate the stench of livestock. He preferred Sophia's courtyard, with its flowers, its grape arbor, where one could sit in the shade, sip tea, and enjoy the breeze in summer, or gather grapes to make wine. That was where they always chose to spend their time. I sold them, I answered calmly. I'm about to leave, so of course I needed to settle everything. This village had never liked me. I had no reason to stay either. In my previous life, I hadn't dared to go, afraid that father and son wouldn't find me. But now I understood. They were never going to look for me. Daniel chuckled, a strange, mocking edge in his tone. Well, I gave you plenty of money. You don't need to raise those things anymore. $1 million is enough for you to buy a house in town. Urged on by Ethan, they finally got into the car. Ethan still refused to say goodbye. Perhaps there really was nothing left to say. Maybe in this lifetime, we would never see each other again. Daniel handed me a cell phone. If you miss us, you can call. In my past life, he hadn't left me anything. This time, I acted indifferent, and that actually made him more willing. But I knew I would never call. I also wouldn't take that money. From now on, the mountains and rivers stretched endlessly between us, and we would go our separate ways with no promise of meeting again. When the convoy disappeared completely into the mountain road, I picked up my luggage and turned back for one last look at the house that had been mine. Rachel, your new life has only just begun. That first night after returning to the Thompson estate, Daniel lay on a luxurious, soft bed. A strange sense of familiarity crept over him. He couldn't help but remember the simple wooden bed back in the village, the faded mosquito net, and the endless, irritating buzz of mosquitoes. He tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Later on, when I made sachets of herbs to drive away the mosquitoes, things finally improved. Now, in his room, the air conditioner was cool and comfortable, carrying with it a faint fragrance. It was the scent he had once loved most. Daniel Thompson thought he would sleep soundly that night, but by midnight, he was still restless, unable to close his eyes. Something was missing. He wondered if it was the herbal scent. Perhaps that was it. The sandalwood incense in the room suddenly felt cloying, and he nearly stayed awake the entire night. The next morning, Daniel looked exhausted. Breakfast at the Thompson estate was lavish, with a full spread of both Chinese and Western dishes to suit everyone's tastes. Ethan picked up his chopsticks and carefully chose a dish of fish in front of him. Daniel's father noticed and said sternly, "Ethan, mind your manners while eating." Ethan immediately felt aggrieved. In the past, his mother would always serve him the best portion. Sophia White reached out, intending to help, but was stopped. "He's not a child anymore. Let him do it himself." Then, with a faint sigh, Daniel's father muttered, "What can you expect from a boy raised by a country woman?" Hearing that, Sophia quietly set her chopsticks down. Ethan felt even more wronged. Before, when his mom hadn't allowed Sophia to care for him, she never listened. Now, his sensitive heart realized his grandfather didn't seem to like him much, and even Sophia wasn't the same as before. For the first time, he seemed to miss his mother. Children's feelings are simple. After breakfast, he said something to Daniel. Daniel thought for a moment and dialed my number, but no one answered. He forced a smile. "Maybe your mom is busy. We'll try again later." But soon, Ethan didn't get another chance to call. His schedule was packed tightly by the Thompsons. Daniel's father wasn't satisfied with the performance of his eldest grandson, insisting Ethan had much to learn. The boy spent the whole day correcting his posture until his back and legs ached. By evening, he was completely drained, body and mind. After bathing, he lay in bed and whined, "Dad, my legs hurt. Rub them for me." Daniel tried, but he didn't press the right spots, and it gave Ethan no relief. "Dad, ask Aunt Sophia to do it." Ethan shook his head. "She doesn't know how. Only Mom does." Daniel fell silent, caught off guard. Ethan rolled his eyes. "Then tell me a story. If you tell me a story, it won't hurt as much. Last time I had a fever, Mom held me, told me stories, and helped me fall asleep." Daniel stroked his son's head. "What story do you want to hear? The story about you and Mom." "Me and Rachel?" he asked softly. "It's just an ordinary story." He began to recount it. "Back then, I went hiking and accidentally fell into a ravine. Rachel saved me and rented a cart to bring me all the way back to her village, more than 100 miles away. My leg was broken. I had no memory of who I was and nowhere to go, so I followed her home. She gave me the nickname Ox, scolding me as she massaged and treated my injury every day. In the end, she healed my leg completely. Her skills were remarkable. She could even turn wild vegetables into delicious meals. I was grateful to her and thought she was a kind and good woman. She was beautiful too. Later, I overheard villagers gossiping that if Rachel kept me, no one would ever marry her again, that she had just picked up some useless stray. But at the time, I couldn't even carry a bucket of water, so they weren't entirely wrong. Rachel got angry though. She snapped back, saying, "How could you all mock him when he's already in such a miserable state? He's educated, he speaks so well, and if I want to keep him, so what?" Daniel's voice grew softer. I was furious. In that moment, carried away, I proposed to her. But the moment those words left his mouth, Daniel regretted them. Deep down, he had a vague sense that sooner or later, he would leave that place. Yet when he saw the blush on my cheeks, he suddenly no longer felt regret. He thought to himself it didn't matter. When the time came, he would take me with him. Later, when I gave birth to Ethan, my slender figure and smooth skin were gone. Stretch marks spread across my belly. I was no longer the delicate, graceful young woman I had been before marriage. I could shout and argue with people over a few coins, slowly becoming no different from the coarse women of the village. Daniel began to feel disgust toward me. And then Sophia White entered his world. There were times when he couldn't help but think, if only the woman who had saved him back then had been Sophia instead of me. He believed I didn't know how to raise our son. I never cared about Ethan's studies. Only when he caused trouble did I discipline him harshly. The rest of the time, I spoiled him too much. In his eyes, I wasn't fit to teach the Thompson family's eldest grandson, let alone be the mistress of the household. So he used his mother's illness as an excuse, abandoned me in disgrace, and left with Sophia. He told himself Sophia was the one who should step out of the mountains and into the city. If Ethan hadn't stirred his old memories this time, Daniel might have nearly forgotten that once upon a time, I had been a young woman who could make people fall in love with me. Thinking of that, his eyes hardened with resolve. He told Ethan, "In a few days, we'll go visit your mother." But by the time they finally arranged their schedule and returned to the village, I was gone. The villagers said I had left the same day they did. They assumed I had gone to Tansville to look for them. The phone and the bank card he had left for me were both neatly placed under my pillow. In that instant, Daniel woke up to the truth. I had loved him, but I had never asked him for anything. Ethan began to panic. "Where's Mom? Why isn't she home?" Daniel stood there dazed, recalling my reactions from the days before. A faint panic rose in his heart. He thought I must really be angry this time, but he comforted Ethan, saying, "Your mom is just upset. It's okay. She'll be back in a few days. When she does, you need to say some nice things to her." Ethan nodded. I had run away from home once before. That time, it was because Daniel and Sophia had stayed up too late talking and fallen asleep in the yard. I cried and made a scene. For the first time, Daniel scolded me with a harsh tone. "Why are you making such a fuss? What will people think of Sophia?" I froze. Those words hurt more than a slap, so I turned and ran, spending the whole night in the mountains. But not long after, I returned on my own. Smiling sheepishly, I crept up to him and whispered, "I was wrong. I believe you and her have nothing going on." Daniel neither coaxed me nor came looking for me. He had laughed lightly and said, "She's your mother. She'll come back on her own." And this time, he believed the same thing. He left his number with the neighbors, telling them to call if I returned. But he waited and never received the call he most wanted. After leaving the village, I wandered through many places until I finally settled in a small fishing town by the sea. I rented a tiny room and began living life on my own terms, focusing on my embroidery. This fishing town was far more open-minded than my old village. People admired my work, bought it, and even resold it elsewhere. I was both surprised and delighted. I began making the pieces I was best at, sachets and herbal pillows. They sold quickly, and with the money I earned, I spent it all on myself. In my previous life, when I went to the city, I once heard the women in that seaside town say, "When a woman has money, she ought to cherish herself a little." So I bought rare herbs to create skincare products. The recipe was an old secret, passed down from my father, hidden at the bottom of a trunk. In the past, I could never afford those ingredients, nor had I ever thought of using them for myself. But now I could. My skin gradually became fairer and smoother, and I myself became a living advertisement. The village women flocked to me, asking curiously, "Don't keep something so good to yourself. We'll buy it, we'll buy it." Soon, I gained a bit of fame. People from neighboring villages and even from town came looking for me. I earned enough to rent a larger property, turning part of it into a workshop and renovating several rooms into a homestay. I planted flowers everywhere, and when they bloomed in vibrant colors, the sight was breathtaking. My life grew better with each passing day, until one day, a guest came from Tansville. He introduced himself as the deputy general manager of a cosmetics brand under the Thompson Corporation, and he wanted to buy the rights to my formula. Listening to the man speak endlessly about business, I was momentarily stunned. His brows and eyes resembled Daniel Thompson's so much. He turned out to be Daniel's cousin, named Matthew Thompson. When I realized his identity, I immediately refused. I wanted no connection whatsoever with the Thompson Corporation. But Matthew kept pleading, and in the end he managed to stay. "Please, ma'am, help me. If I can't sign this contract, my dad will cut off all my cards." And so, he stayed for half a month. Unexpectedly, he began to pursue me. I kept a calm face and told him, "My husband and son were both doomed by me. Haven't you heard the rumors?" Back in the village, many people had tried to arrange a match for me, and in my panic, I had blurted that out. Only then did they finally stop. But Matthew's eyes lit up. I had once read my fortune. My fate was indeed harsh. He wouldn't leave, so I let him stay. At least he was free labor. One day, during a video call, he stammered, "Cousin, I'm still here. Once I finish up, I'll come back." By chance, I appeared in the camera's frame. The line went silent. A moment later, Daniel's cold voice came through. "Rachel, you've made me search so hard for you." The next day, I saw Daniel and Ethan again. The moment he spotted me, Ethan ran over and hugged me tightly. "Mom, Dad and I finally found you." In the past, he had only ever clung to Sophia White that way. Daniel's expression was calm, but his eyes were full of confidence as he looked at me. "It's been a year, Rachel. I've been searching for you all year. Aren't you done being angry?" Finding me shouldn't have been easy. They didn't even have a single photograph of me. Once on my birthday, I wanted to go to town and have a family portrait taken, but no one in the house agreed to go. I gently pried Ethan's arms from me. You've mistaken me for someone else. His eyes clouded over as if a veil of mist had covered them. Mom, do you not want me anymore? Daniel frowned. He thinks about you every day. Sometimes he even dreams of you and wakes up crying. Rachel, he's your own flesh and blood. How can you be so heartless? Heartless? When it came to cruelty, how could I ever compare to them? In my previous life, the last time I saw them was when they stood by and watched me leave in shame without a word in my defense. I was reborn in this life to live for myself. Just then, Matthew suddenly interjected. She's Rachel, the sister-in-law my cousin has been searching for all this time. He blurted out, But how can that be? She told me her husband and son had both been cursed by her fate. Daniel's face darkened instantly. When Matthew learned the full story, he simply shrugged. If that's the case, maybe you two were never meant to be. Cousin, don't force what isn't fated. Daniel shot Matthew a cold glance. You don't want that Panamera anymore, do you? Matthew hesitated, but then clenched his teeth and replied, A car can always be bought again, but if you lose your wife, you'll never win her back. Daniel froze. That single sentence pierced straight through his heart. Furious, he shouted, She's your sister-in-law. Matthew lifted his chin defiantly. Then why is she here all alone? Enough. I finally spoke, cutting short the ridiculous scene. Both of you, get out. Matthew clearly didn't want to give up, but Daniel forcibly dragged him away. And yet Daniel truly left Ethan behind with me. Before leaving, he said, Wait for me, I'll come back. After they were gone, Ethan and I faced each other, wide eyes staring. The boy seemed delighted, chattering endlessly about everything that had happened in the past year. He told me about the endless schoolwork, how any mistake earned him a smack on the hand. He said Sophia White didn't care for him, only focused on pleasing Mrs. Thompson. He said he missed me so much. So that was why. He missed me because life had been miserable. But deep down, he was still the same selfish child as in my past life. Back then, Ethan probably hadn't lived well either, but Daniel had never thought of bringing him to find me. Eventually, he adapted to life in the Thompson household. In truth, Sophia's choice hadn't been wrong. Mrs. Thompson's position in the family was critical. Daniel always felt guilty toward her, and his father adored her even more. In my previous life, Sophia had used that as her stepping stone, carefully managing her every move until she softened both father and son of the Thompson family. But in this life, I had left, and Daniel's lingering guilt had led to the outcome now. Even so, Ethan was still the son I had given birth to. I couldn't drive him away. He grinned and said, Mom, I want red bean soup like you used to make. I only ordered takeout for him. His face was full of disappointment. I said coldly, If you won't eat, then stay hungry until your dad comes to get you. He sulked, spooning the rice into his mouth one bite at a time. 2 days later, Daniel rushed back. He looked tired but also excited. Rachel, I'm not leaving. Our family will stay here, live like we used to. I didn't let him in. I pushed Ethan toward him and shut them both outside the door. No rooms left, sorry. They stood outside for a long time, unwilling to leave. In my past life, when they left me behind, I too had stood for hours, watching until their car completely vanished before turning away. Back then, I was always the one waiting, begging. Now it was their turn to understand what it felt like to wait for someone who would never come. But Daniel still wouldn't go. He rented a small place nearby. During the day, when I held classes to teach women how to embroider sachets, they would come and join in, pretending to be students. Both of them were serious, carefully learning to make the very sachets they had once scorned. Sometimes when I looked up, I caught Daniel gazing at me absent-mindedly. I knew why. I wore a cheongsam while embroidering, and I looked beautiful in it. Otherwise, Matthew would never have fallen for a village woman older than himself, even if part of his pursuit was tangled with personal gain. I paid them no attention, treating them as nothing more than passers-by. Half a month later, Sophia White suddenly showed up. She was clad head to toe in designer brands, just as in my previous life. When she saw me, she froze for a moment before saying, Rachel, you've changed so much. Then her tone turned mocking. No wonder you managed to seduce Daniel to the point he doesn't even want to go home or care about the company. At that moment, Daniel walked in and heard her. What nonsense are you spouting? Sophia instantly put on a pitiful expression. Daniel, since you haven't gone home, your mother's illness has relapsed. Daniel's tone turned cold. Stay by her side, that's enough. Why don't you just focus on playing Victoria, Daniel's little sister? I thought to myself. Over the past year, everything Sophia White had done had slowly worn away whatever affection Daniel still had for her. Sophia's expression soured. Playing Victoria meant she was nothing more than Daniel's sister, allowed only to stay by Mrs. Thompson's side whenever her illness flared up. The moment Mrs. Thompson recovered, Sophia became an outsider with no claim to anything. Only as Daniel's wife and Ethan's mother could she remain in the Thompson family forever. To go from wealth to nothing, Sophia could never accept that. Suddenly she turned, dropping to her knees before me, her voice choked. Rachel, please, let Daniel go. Because of you, he's fought bitterly with his family. He refuses to return home if he can't take you with him. My uncle's blood pressure has spiked from anger. My aunt can't handle the shock, and Matthew is causing trouble every day. I almost laughed out loud. Hadn't I already fled far enough? They were the ones who sought me out, clinging no matter how I tried to push them away. They shattered the peaceful, simple life I had built, yet in the end, it was somehow me who was accused of not letting Daniel go. I narrowed my eyes at Daniel. If you don't leave, I'll sell my patent to Venora. Daniel froze. Venora was the Thompson Corporation's fiercest competitor in cosmetics. Because of that intense rivalry, the family business had hit a bottleneck, which was why they had come all this way to seek out my herbal formula in the first place. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The days we had spent under the same roof were enough for him to realize I no longer had any affection for him. If even Ethan couldn't hold a place in my heart, how could the Thompson family's interests matter to me? At last, Daniel yielded. It was as though all the strength had been drained from his body. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I saw his back slouch instead of standing tall. You hate me that much? He asked quietly. I shook my head. I used to. In my last life, when I died, I thought that if I could ever meet you again, I wouldn't save you. Not kicking you while you were down would already be enough, out of respect for the fact that we were once husband and wife. But this past year, I focused on my work and cared for myself, and I've become better. I realize there's nothing left to hate. I rarely even think of you anymore. Because the truth is, I don't love you anymore. Hate isn't the opposite of love, forgetting is. Daniel finally decided to leave. Ethan sobbed, clinging to me, refusing to go. Perhaps he couldn't understand why the mother who loved him most suddenly seemed not to want him. But I could never let go of the memory of my past life, the image of him rejecting me, calling security to throw me out. That scene haunted me still. He cried until he nearly couldn't breathe. In the end, I softened, wrapping him in my arms. Go back with your dad. You can come again during summer break. Still, he looked uneasy. What if I come then and you've already left? I held out my pinky finger. No. We've made a promise and I won't go back on it. Daniel looked at me, his voice low. Thank you. Then he added, Rachel, I won't give up. After returning home, Daniel finally resolved to drive Sophia out of the Thompson household. She was stunned. But what about your mother? I've already spoken to the doctor, Daniel said flatly. Her condition is improving. Most of her illness was caused by me. From now on, I'll be the one to stay by her side. Sophia burst into tears. If I'm all alone, what am I supposed to do? Daniel's gaze turned cold and deep. A person should never covet what doesn't belong to them. Sophia regretted everything then. If she had known that the woman she once scorned, me, Rachel, would change so much, become so captivating that Daniel would turn back to me, she never would have underestimated me. Sophia should have accepted long ago when Mrs. Thompson wanted to take her in as a goddaughter. Mr. Thompson had even mentioned it before, but she refused. Now it was too late for regrets. Back then, she only thought about becoming Mrs. Thompson herself. This time, Daniel was truly determined. The elder Mr. Thompson disapproved of me, wanting Daniel to marry someone of equal status, capable and well-matched. But for the first time, Daniel defied him. He knelt in the ancestral hall for 3 days and 3 nights until he collapsed from exhaustion. The Thompsons couldn't bear to lose the brilliant heir they had just regained, so in the end, they relented. When he woke, Matthew looked at him with a complicated expression. Will she really come back to the Thompson estate with you? Daniel shook his head. Then is it worth all this? Matthew pressed. Calmly, Daniel replied, I have to prepare for every possibility. For the past year, whenever he thought of me, he remembered only the good things. Before Ethan was born, we had shared happy times. He had once been deeply dependent on me, and he truly had loved me. He drowned himself in those memories again and again until he was forced to admit it. He had fallen in love with me once more. Whether or not I would forgive him, he didn't know. But in the end, a person's life is shaped by their own choices. I stayed in the little fishing village. Whenever he had time, Daniel would bring Ethan to visit me. I no longer drove them away, but I didn't welcome them warmly either. I couldn't tell if their fondness was really for me or for the light I carried now. My heart had died in my past life. It couldn't be warmed again. Daniel began learning to cook, imitating the dishes I used to make, serving them to us. Ethan no longer found me annoying. Instead, he peppered me with questions, just as he once clung to Sophia. He told me he saw me on TV, and his classmates all said his mom was beautiful. That unhidden vanity, innocent though it seemed, still made my heart twist. I couldn't help but remember the bitter, cutting face he had shown me in my past life. Ethan told me Sophia was gone. The woman the Thompson family had once expected to become their matriarch had vanished, leaving only me. Suddenly, I remembered my past life and couldn't stop myself from asking him, "Do you really think your mom could handle being the mistress of the Thompson family?" He smiled. "Mom, whoever you are, that's exactly what the mistress of the Thompson family should be." When in love, people can be intoxicating. In my past life, I clung to that sweetness to survive for years. Sophia, however, had grown accustomed to wealth and luxury and could never return to a small village. I heard she latched on to a rich man in his 50s, only to be stripped naked in the street by his wife. After that, she drifted again, from one man to another. Meanwhile, I lived my simple life, keeping a distant, lukewarm relationship with them. Our village was remote, but I still sold the patent for my formula to the Thompson Corporation on a profit-sharing basis. Who doesn't want to make money? Daniel never remarried. Both at home and in his office, he hung my photographs. Everyone in Tansville knew I was his one and only wife. Ethan often called me. Even if I didn't answer because I was busy, he never dared be upset. And so things stayed like that, year after year. Before his coming-of-age ceremony, they came together to invite me. Ethan seemed uncertain, carefully pleading, "Mom, all these years you didn't want to come home, and we respected your wishes. But this is my ceremony." I thought back to my past life, emotions too tangled to describe. In the end, I went with them back to Tansville. Because of my presence, the banquet was even grander than in my previous life. Guests flocked to toast me. The rarely seen mistress of the Thompson family had finally appeared. Memories of my past life merged with the present, and I curved my lips in a faint smile. Now I could both live freely for myself and hold in my hands everything I had once longed for. Hadn't I said it all along? A woman must live her life for herself.